A chemical pregnancy is a miscarriage, and don't let anyone else tell you differently. Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. So today, as you can see by the title of the video, we are going to be talking about chemical pregnancies. This video is very near and dear to my heart because I have personally experienced a chemical pregnancy along with 2 other 8-week miscarriages, and so unfortunately I have experience in the area. Before jumping into this video at all, I feel like I have to start by saying a chemical pregnancy is a miscarriage, and don't let anyone else tell you differently. I don't know what it is about chemical pregnancies that make people feel like it's not a miscarriage, because it absolutely is. It's just a very, very early miscarriage. The doctor that I had at the time of my chemical pregnancy, I don't know, like the doctor was nice about it, but they just pushed it off as if it was nothing. And that being my first ever pregnancy, I don't know, it just made me feel super uneasy and almost made me feel like I had to justify feeling sad. But you don't. If you are going through this, you are experiencing a miscarriage, and you are right to feel heartbroken and sad, and don't let anybody tell you otherwise. Some people honestly are just uneducated, and so they don't understand that this is a miscarriage. I even have a really good friend, he's such a nice guy, and recently this year I actually had an 8-week miscarriage. He was inviting me and my husband over to hang out, and I said, well, I don't know if you know what's going on with me, but I just had a miscarriage, and I'm not really up for hanging out and visiting. He responded and said, oh, I thought it was just a chemical pregnancy, which it wasn't. It was an 8-week miscarriage, so a little later than a chemical pregnancy. However, the way he kind of discredited chemical pregnancies being a big deal, I know he didn't mean anything by it. I didn't say anything to him, even though maybe it was my place to educate him, but it just wasn't the time considering what I was going through. I don't know, I feel like most of the time people are just uneducated and they don't know. So just ignore them, don't let it bother you. If you are going through this, then you are or had a miscarriage. So one more thing before jumping in, I have to always do a medical disclaimer. I am not a doctor, I am not a nurse, I am not a fertility specialist. I am just a mom who has gone through multiple trying to conceive journeys. I've had multiple miscarriages, and I just know a little bit about the subject, so I'm sharing with you my knowledge and my experience. So the very first question is, what is a chemical pregnancy? So I'm gonna hit up Google, as I often do, and by definition, a chemical pregnancy is a term used to describe a very early miscarriage, which occurs before the 5th week of gestation and well before the fetus can be visibly detected on an ultrasound. A chemical pregnancy is believed to affect as many as 75% of pregnancies that end in miscarriage. So first of all, as Google said, it is a miscarriage. Second of all, chemical pregnancies are actually one of the most common miscarriages that women go through, and oddly enough, most women don't even know that they're experiencing them, especially if they weren't trying to conceive. But even if they were, if they had planned on testing after their missed period and then, they bled on or around when they would start their period, they probably just assumed they had a period, maybe it was a few days late, and that they never were pregnant. Unless you're testing early and you detect the hormone, you really won't know that you even had a miscarriage because it happens so quickly. So I know what's going through your head because I have gone through this too. You're asking yourself, is this my fault? Was there something I could have done to prevent it? Did I do something wrong? And the answer is no, no, and no. There is nothing you did to cause this to happen. Most likely it was a chromosomal abnormality, which pretty much just means it was going to happen. It was just something with your body. It had nothing to do with anything you did. It wasn't the glass of wine you had before you found out you were pregnant. It wasn't drugs. It wasn't exercise. It was nothing that you did. So completely get that out of your head, because it's gonna drive you crazy if you start trying to pinpoint reasons that you had a miscarriage. So if you're watching this video, it might be because you're going through it right now, and maybe you're not even sure if you're having a chemical pregnancy, and you're wondering, how do I know if I'm having a chemical pregnancy or if I've had a chemical pregnancy? Well, one for sure way to know is, have you gotten a positive pregnancy test? If the answer is yes, you can continue taking pregnancy tests, and if the line is getting lighter and lighter and then eventually ends up negative, then you had a chemical pregnancy. That is showing you that at some point you had that burst of pregnancy hormone, and then now it's slowly slowly going away. And so that is a chemical pregnancy. That is what happened to me, and I believe what happens to most people who go through this. The second way to know is if you did get a positive pregnancy test and you knew you were pregnant and then bleeding occurs. So if on or around your period, maybe within that first week or so when you normally would start a period, if you start bleeding heavily and it turns into like a normal period, then you most likely had a chemical pregnancy. And if you were to at that point take a pregnancy test, you'll probably find that it's negative. So really just testing and seeing it go from positive to negative or eventually bleeding are the really only two ways to know that you're going through this chemical pregnancy. You obviously are more than welcome to contact a doctor and ask that they give you a blood test, and it will show you if you have any of the pregnancy hormones in your system. And if you do, you could always go back at a later time and have them test again, and you can see if it's dropped or if it's gone away. If you want like a doctor to really confirm that you are not pregnant, then definitely do it, because that's what I had to do. I just couldn't rely on pregnancy tests to tell me that I've lost my baby, that I am no longer pregnant. So if you need to hear it from a doctor, that's completely normal and there's nothing wrong with that. So if this is something that might be happening to you or you're worried about, you might be wondering, how does it feel? Honestly, it's gonna be very similar to a period. Since you're not very far along in your pregnancy, it's definitely going to be a lot closer to just a period. For me, I was having a little more intense cramping than I would on a normal period, but just for a day. And then after that, it pretty much just turned into a regular period. I will say that when I was having these more intense cramps that first day when I started bleeding, I was way emotional. Obviously, this whole thing was making me emotional and sad, but as I was cramping, I just remember feeling so lost and just so upset. I remember my husband asking me, hey, do you want me to get you some medication to help with the cramping? And I said no, because there was this strange part of me that just wanted to feel it. It's almost like the pain was confirming that I was having a miscarriage and that I was not going to be having a baby like I planned. Even though it was only a short week or so that I knew I was pregnant, in that week, your brain goes crazy and you are planning the due date. You're planning on boy names and girl names. You're creating a bond with this pregnancy, with this baby, within seconds of finding out that you're pregnant. I think that some people who have never experienced this do not understand that. Just because you only knew you were pregnant for a week, it's still extremely draining emotionally and even physically. So all I can say is make sure that you reach out to support people. If you do have a partner or a spouse, lean on them during this time. You can contact family or friends, even me. You can find me on Instagram and direct message me, and we can have a personal one-on-one chat. Honestly, for me, just talking about it was really nice. I feel like a lot of times people want to give you some sort of answer for what happened to you, and there is no answer. It just sucks, and sometimes you just need to talk to somebody that's gone through it before, so hit me up if that's something that you need. So obviously, in relation to that, you might be wondering, is the bleeding going to be heavier than a period? And it really could go both ways. For me, it was a little heavier that first day or two, and then again it just turned into a normal period. I did have darker blood that first day and even saw a couple small dark clots, so you can expect that that's a possibility, but otherwise it was a lot like a normal period. So you shouldn't have way more bleeding than an average period. Which brings up the question, can you wear tampons? And I'm gonna say no. You might want to talk to your doctor, but I would say most doctors are gonna advise against really sticking anything up there for a couple of weeks, so that includes tampons, and then obviously having sex is a no-no. I highly recommend just wearing oversized pads. You can find them on Amazon, because I know right now times are weird, and I'll have a couple linked below that I really like, but I usually just wear nighttime pads if I'm bleeding heavily, and then switch to like panty liners as it gets lighter, just like you would with a period, but no tampons. A lot of you who are trying to conceive, especially if this was your first pregnancy, you might be wondering, when can I start trying again? Well, based on what my doctor told me, I was able to start trying immediately after this early miscarriage. You're pretty much immediately going into having a period. And so for me, I ovulated just like normal. I was just like a week or so off and was able to start trying again, and actually got pregnant with my now son, who is 21 months old. So you absolutely can get pregnant the next cycle after having a chemical pregnancy. One big thing to note, you need to be emotionally ready as well. Even though your body might be ready, you may not be emotionally, so you have to do what's best for you. And again, if you just need to talk to somebody about all of these feelings, please feel free to find me on Instagram, or even feel free to comment below. Obviously, I'm trying to build a community of women, of moms to be, and we all need to support each other. So if you want to comment below your story, your questions, your concerns, or just vent, myself and our little mom community that we're building will all be there to support you. If you have experienced multiple miscarriages, especially if they are consecutive, then you might want to speak to your doctor if they've not said something to you already, because there could be other underlying conditions that are causing you to have miscarriages. This is me. I have had multiple miscarriages, and they're finally suspecting that it could be something more. They think I have a uterine septum, which I plan on doing a video all about in case that's something you have or you're concerned about. And so there might be an actual reason I'm having miscarriages, and that could be you too. So I wouldn't be concerned after having one, because they are so common. But if you have had a few in a row, it might be something you want to speak to your doctor about, just to make sure that there's nothing else causing this to happen. If you did like this video and you found it informative, then make sure to give it a thumbs up. I really appreciate it, and it helps my channel out so much. And if you are new here and you want to join my little family here on YouTube, make sure to subscribe below. And as always, I'll see you in the next video. Bye! I'm always so hot when I do this video. And if you are new, meh.